Sorry about that, the camera cut out earlier, so I'll just kind of go back what I was saying earlier. This is the Silver Surfer. He's helping his girlfriend get over her dad dying, which is like pretty emotional. Very good comic book though. It's powerful crap. But yeah, Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. My favourite. Pretty much in this, Deadpool, well, he kills the Marvel Universe. Pretty much, they try to solve his sanity, and instead of solving it, it makes him even more unhinged, and he decides that the whole universe needs to die, and that's what he does, he kills the whole universe. After that, he finds out that the best way to kill every character in the universe, because it's pretty hard to kill, like, you know, every Spider-Man in existence, is to go back into, like, the classics and kill them. It's really funny and a great read. In this one, Deadpool kills Deadpool. It's explained, Deadpool kills Deadpool because Deadpool thinks that by killing Deadpool, we end the entire multiverse. Instead, Deadpool kills Deadpool, and yeah, that doesn't make anything any clearer. Read it, you'll find out. Also in this, you see Deadpool versus Carnage, which is when Deadpool goes up against Carnage. Very interesting. I think if you want to read Absolute Carnage at the moment, a very important read because it kind of follows on, if you know what I mean. Sweet. So we went through all of those. Holy shit, what's the next? I showed you Superior Spider-Man already. Last Marvel comic that I'm going to mention, Venomverse. Venomverse is kind of, well, Spider-Verse went pretty well, so I assume Venomverse would go pretty well, and it did. Pretty much what happens is, there's loads of Venom symbiotes in the multiverse, as you could possibly know already, and it turns out that these beings, as the poisons, are trying to kill all Venom symbiotes. They do this by bonding with the Venom symbiote, but killing it completely. But they still need the Venom symbiote so that they can kind of be together, if you know what I mean. But they don't need the symbiote, they need the host. So anyway, during this, we see very awesome versions of Venom. We see Ghost Rider Venom, we see Wolverine Venom. We see the Spider-Man version of Venom, which hates Eddie Brock, and then he becomes a poison. Read the comic book, that's all I've got to say. Now we're going on to DC. I think it's kind of convenient that the camera cut out then, isn't it? DC has the best comic books here and the worst comic books here. We're going to go through these as quickly as possible. I'm pretty sure I have all my Superman comic books together, but I don't think I did. Okay. Well, I'm going to say that you know now, our old Superman comic book. Oh no, it won't. It won't pop up randomly. Don't worry, we've got it here. Pretty much, both of these comic books are from the 1990s. I've got another one there, but I'll explain that one later. And I've got nothing to say to this about these, to be honest with you. This one is when this guy called Arclight tries to kill Superman and he fails. This one, another guy tried to kill Superman. Why are so many people trying to kill Superman? And it also fails. In this one, these guys go up against these people from the Dark Multiverse. No, not the Dark Multiverse, the Anti-Multiverse. And they pretty much lose terribly. This one's part of the Multiversity comic books. This is also part of the, not Infinite Crisis, what's the word for it? Final Crisis comic book event. Very good. I'm not going to go into it because there's a lot to go into. This is Rebirth. And wow, what can I say about Rebirth? Rebirth is probably one of the coolest comic books I've actually ever picked up. Pretty much, what we start to find out during Rebirth, I'm just getting all my Rebirth comic books together. Was that all the Green Lantern Rebirths? That is, we say the first Rebirth, so later. Pretty much, during Rebirth, we find out that Dr. Manhattan's behind this, but before we do find out, pretty much this is the Green Lantern's Rebirth. This is the Sinestro Corps War, which pretty much means that the Green Lanterns and the Yellow Lanterns are at war with each other. They kind of make peace until we find out that a Green Lantern killed a Yellow Lantern, which is like crap. In this one, this is kind of not very interesting, but interesting at the same time, because Hal Jordan almost gets into the Speed Force, which is like, wow, amazing. In this one, I'm trying to find out who killed who, in terms of the comic book I mentioned before that one. Oh, crap. This comic book's based on Sinestro. And then we've got Injustice, Gods Among Us. Let's get all the right comic books. Baby. We don't have the right one. We have the right one now. Yes. In Injustice, Superman turns evil. He starts killing people because, well, Lois Lane got killed by the Joker. Well, actually, no. Superman killed Lois Lane because he believed Lois Lane was Doomsday. It turns out it was a trick by the Joker. And then Superman kills the Joker. who then blows up the whole city. Very, very confusing. But anyway, this leads Superman to becoming evil. And during these, this is kind of year 5, isn't it? Yes, during year 5, you see that Superman goes to very, very intense lengths to make sure that, well, the city's protected. I think what stood out to me most was in these two comic books here. Lex Luthor tries to make a clone of Superman, Bizarro, sounds familiar. And pretty much Bizarro develops in character and then gets killed by Doomsday in this last issue here. Now, originally, again, I'm not explaining it, it's too complicated. In Forever Evil, very, very awesome comic book. We see these are evil versions of Superman. Through that. Yeah, we see evil versions of the Justice League. Now, these are from an anti-Earth. I think it's Earth 3 or 4, I'm not too sure. But these guys try to take over the world. They ultimately fail, but you still see, you know, most of our superheroes get a really good butt kicking. Pretty much in the end, Lex Luthor is the one who actually saves everybody, which is pretty ironic because Lex Luthor's a bad guy, right? So we've got that. In this one, this is after Superman doomed, when Superman gets turned into the Doomsday. Very cool. I should explain. DC Rebirth. Now, if you guys have me on Snapchat, you probably do, and you're not on my not so private story. It is not that private. I mentioned this character before. This character here is actually Godspeed, and he is one of the fastest speedsters. Well, was one of the fastest speedsters ever. So now he's probably one of the slowest. But this is pretty much Godspeed, the development of Godspeed. Loads of Speed Force storms. This comic book is one of the most, it begins one of the most important comic books that will ever happen in DC Multiverse. This is known as the Doomsday Clock, when we start to find out that Dr. Manhattan is behind everything. And, well, during its countdown, this is kind of the first kind of major hint that Dr. Manhattan is behind everything. It's Dr. Manhattan's first appearance after The Watchmen, which I will mention after. Very interesting comic book. I just love the cover. What one is this one again? Oh yeah, during this one, Flash gets into a fight against Eobard Thawne. Eobard Thawne outsmarts Flash and traps him into negative Speed Force. So seemingly, Eobard Thawne wins this fight. But that's until he turns into the negative Flash, which is, by the way, very cool. And then he kind of comes back and kicks Eobard Thawne's ass. Then, Eobard Thawne gets killed by Lois Lane, which is kind of weird, but, you know, hey. You got to mind, it's very difficult to remember storylines, main ones anyway. That's not that important. In this one, Guru God gets part of the Speed Force, and he's a very difficult villain to face up against. This one is another Speed Force storm, which they stop, and seemingly sacrifice Godspeed to stop the Speed Force storm from going on and on and on. Okay, crap. Oh God, that's fair. Too many trips I'm having on YouTube. During these two issues, during this issue here, these are both issue 44, there's a big, I explained that already, didn't I? Did I? Oh yeah, Speed Force Storm, I did. In issue 50, we have the Flash War. Now, it's about a good 3 or 4 issues before that anyway, yeah? Yeah, a good 4 issues before this. Pretty much, Wally West gets really upset that he's lost his family. So Hunter Zolomon kind of stirs a thing between them. And then Wally West ends up running so fast that he breaks the Speed Force. Because of this, we see 4 other forces get introduced. We see the Still Force, oh crap, come on, you know all these, don't you? Yes, we've got the Still Force, we've got the Strength Force, and we've got the Sage Force. There's another force called the Forever Force, but for you to access that, you have to get all of the forces together. And Hunter Zolomon is the guy behind this. He ends up getting all the forces, the Speed Force, the Sage Force, and the Strength Force. He doesn't get the Still Force yet, but when he does get he has had the Still Force already, he becomes one of the most powerful characters ever. He's not just the greatest Flash, he's the greatest hero. The Riddler just sets up the Flash in these 2 ones. In this one, we get to see the Strength Force in play, which is really awesome. This one is just more Gorilla God stuff. Again, more Gorilla Gods. And then this one, we see the Trickster, who has the Speed and who has the Strength Force. Again, does he? No, it's just the trickster being the trickster. Typical trickster. Sorry about that, mate. In this one, this is Sandman, which is a very interesting comic book in general. You should read it, even if I don't tell you much of the storyline. But pretty much, yeah, it goes through these kind of very powerful beings. Like, we see pretty much, yeah, you see the family known as the Endless. These are these entities which are literally endless, and yeah, I'm not going to go into that. That's so complicated and boring. Let's just roll a ball. This is Batman Year Zero, or 0 Year, whatever way you prefer. In this comic book here, it's just a build up of Batman, really. In what I find interesting, okay, so I know we just kind of had our Joker origin story already from the movies, but I feel as if this comic book is kind of part of the Joker origin story. See, we've never had the Joker origin story in comic books before. The Batman Killing Joke kind of gave us one, but then throughout the years, the Joker's origin story has kind of contradicted. During the New 52, we learned that there might possibly be 3 different Jokers, so if that's the case, that's probably why there's so many different origin stories of the Joker. But one of the main things I wanted to kind of... I can't find it. But pretty much, yeah, we see the accident that makes the Joker, to how I'm looking for the whole thing. Last but not least is The Watchmen. The Watchmen is a comic book that came out in the 1984, 1985. This is a reprinted copy, and what can I say about this comic book? Where do I begin? Pretty much, okay, how do I explain The Watchmen? Oh my gosh, this is so weird. Okay, so pretty much, yeah, what happens in The Watchmen, I can't stop smiling when I say that. What happens in The Watchmen is this guy called the Comedian gets killed. He gets thrown out of a window, and pretty much the first half of the comic story is like, oh my gosh, who did it? Who killed the comedian, and why would someone want to kill the comedian? There's a lot of reasons why people want to kill the comedian. Read through the comic book, you see he's like a Nazi. But anyway, yeah, pretty much, yeah, we see the comedian gets killed. Then after that, there's kind of a lot of events that unfold. It turns out that one of the team members of the Watchmen did it. We get a nice, I think one of my favourite characters ever, Dr. Manhattan. We get a nice introduction to him, explaining what his powers are. He is one of the most powerful characters in the DC multiverse, and at the moment there's a big storyline about him. But anyway, we find out that it was this guy from the Watchmen who did it, and he's planning to pave the way to kind of make peace in the world, and he does this by killing millions and millions of people in New York, and then, what's it called, in this idea that everybody will come in together in peace. That does happen, and everybody he kills everybody in New York, or those people die, and then after that, he achieves world peace. So obviously you've got this question now whether is Ozymandias, has he done the right thing? Has he done the wrong thing? I think it's very interesting. I think definitely from Dr. Manhattan's perspective, it's a very interesting story because we see a character who starts losing his humanity. To explain, Dr. Manhattan got himself involved in an experiment. Well, his original name, I forget his name, so I'm just going to call him Dr. Manhattan. He gets himself put into this experiment that removes the intrinsic field of pretty much anything. The intrinsic field is what holds me and you together, pretty much. It's gravity, electromagnetism, strong nuclear forces, and weak nuclear forces. These are like very, very important. He gets put into this experiment by mistake, and he has his intrinsic field removed. So he becomes literally destroyed at nothing. Anyway, he reforms himself together from that, however, and he becomes the most powerful being ever. Like, he has control over time, he sees time instantaneously, everything that happens. He can obviously like recreate stuff from his mind and everything. He is a pretty big deal. And throughout the comic book, we see him lose his humanity, which is a very interesting kind of perspective. Like, at first he's very human, but after a while he just becomes very black and white. He becomes disconnected. I think what makes this comic book very interesting is that it's very much parallel to the Justice League. And we see that all these characters have problems. Like, from the comedian who's clearly like just a crazy guy to Dr. Manhattan, who becomes very disconnected. You could kind of put that in kind of sync with the Justice League. But also, I think it's kind of a very realistic kind of comic book. I mean, it goes through the Cold War, everything, and you think, well, actually, imagine back in that time if a guy like Dr. Manhattan disappeared. Would the same thing have happened? And I think, well, totally, yeah. Anyway, that's my YouTube channel over all comic books. As you can see here, you've helped me make a very, very big mess of my comic books. I'm going to have to order them up. I've done this because shortly I will be doing storylines. So I'll be doing full storylines of comic books. I'll be explaining characters. I'll be doing the history of characters, how to kill characters, characters' powers, characters' weaknesses, what would happen if these two characters fight. Hopefully that's what I'll start doing. So I thought, well, the best way to start by starting with what I have. And I have all of this. I will explain what I have in detail as well. Hopefully as I go through comic book channels. Hopefully when I get a better, like, you know, quality YouTube channel. But thank you for watching if you did watch. Bye.